I never thought heartbreak could smell like old leather and sweat. But that was the first thing I noticed the night my life unraveled. The second was his voice, low, steady, cutting through the noise in my head like a punch I didn't see coming. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I wasn't supposed to find myself standing in a half-empty gym at midnight, trying to convince myself that the bruises on my body were easier to handle than the ones on my heart. But then again, nothing in my life had been going according to plan lately. The gym reeked of blood, sweat, and perseverance, the kind of place where dreams either burned alive or got extinguished on the mat. The only light came from a flickering fluorescent bulb over the ring. And him, Ethan. He was leaning against the ropes when I walked in, arms crossed, posture screaming authority, but his eyes dark, unreadable, made me falter. He wasn't the kind of man you stared at for too long unless you wanted to get lost. But I couldn't help it. There was a gravity to him, pull I couldn't ignore, and it terrified me more than any opponent I'd ever faced. Back again. His tone was flat, almost bored, but there was something sharp underneath. You must like pain. I smirked, though my throat was dry. Better than silence. His eyebrow arched just slightly, a flicker of something that might have been curiosity. He pushed himself off the ropes and stepped toward me, each movement deliberate, predatory even. I swallowed hard. You're late, he said. It's my thing. I hate lateness. Guess we're a bad match, coach. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. He moved past me, brushing my shoulder on purpose or maybe not. Couldn't tell. All I knew was that my skin burned where he touched me. That was the first night I realized Ethan wasn't just my boxing coach. He was going to be my undoing. The first few weeks had been hell. I joined the gym after my ex, Daniel, left me in a blaze of accusations and slammed doors. He said I didn't know what I wanted, that I was too afraid to commit, too afraid to feel. Maybe he was right. But walking into this gym, into Ethan's orbit, had been like stepping into a storm I didn't know how to survive. Ethan wasn't gentle. He didn't hold your hand or tell you it would be okay. He barked orders, corrected my stance with sharp taps to my shoulders, pressed his fist into my gut when I left it unguarded. Every correction left me feeling exposed and alive in a way I hadn't felt in months. One night, after he spent 20 minutes tearing apart my footwork, I dropped onto the bench, gasping. Sweat poured down my face, dripping onto the floor. You're sloppy, he said, standing over me like a shadow. You let your emotions get in the way. That'll get you hurt. I glared up at him. What if that's the only way I know how to fight? For the first time, his mask cracked. His eyes lingered on me, dark and dangerous, but softer somehow. He crouched down until we were eye level, and I swear the air shifted. Then you'd better learn to control it, he whispered, or it'll control you. It should have been just another piece of advice. But the way his voice dipped lower, almost like he was speaking only to Menet as a coach, but as a man, it twisted something inside me. And that was when it started. The looks that lasted too long. The touches that lingered, just enough to drive me insane. The silence heavy with words neither of us dared to say. Late-night training became our ritual. The world outside dissolved the moment the gym doors closed, leaving just the hum of the old lights, the sound of fists against bags, and the rhythm of our breaths. One night, after endless drills, my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even unwrap the tape from my knuckles. Ethan sat down beside me, his presence filling the space like smoke. Without a word, he took my hands in his rough, calloused, steady and started peeling away the tape. I froze. My heart thundered against my ribs, screaming louder than any punch I'd ever taken. His fingers brushed mine. Slow. Deliberate. As if testing how much closeness I could handle. Or maybe testing himself. "Why do you push so hard?" he asked, his voice low, almost curious. I wanted to lie, to shrug it off with a joke. But the weight of his gaze pinned me. "Because if I stop, I'll think. And if I think, I'll remember." "Remember what?" "The way he left," I whispered. Something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Not pity, he wasn't the type. But something deeper. Something that looked a lot like recognition. "He didn't deserve you." His words were quiet, but they landed harder than any punch. For a moment, couldn't breathe. My throat tightened. My chest burned. I wanted to laugh, to cry, to lean into him and let him break me apart all over again. Instead, I pulled my hands back, afraid of what might happen if I didn't. But the truth was already out. I was falling for him, piece by dangerous piece. That night, I dreamt of him. Not of boxing, not of fights, but of Ethan standing close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath on my neck. His hand resting at the small of my back. Steady and grounding. I woke up with my heart racing and my sheets tangled, cursing myself for wanting something I couldn't have. Because Ethan wasn't just a man. He was my coach. My escape. My lifeline. Crossing that line could destroy everything. But every night, when the gym lights dimmed and his shadow fell across me, I wondered if he was thinking the same thing. The tension kept building. Fight after fight. Night after night. Every punch. Every bruise. Every glance was all foreplay to something we both refused to name. Until the night it finally snapped. I was sparring with him, and he was pushing harder than usual. His gloves slammed into mine. His body crowding me. His voice sharp and demanding. "Focus. Stop running. Stand your ground." "I am." I snapped back, sweat stinging my eyes. "Then prove it." I swung harder, reckless, and he caught me with a hook that sent me stumbling into the ropes. He was on me instantly, one hand on my chest to steady me, his face inches from mine. My breath caught, my vision blurred, but not from the punch. "Why do you keep holding back?" he growled. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the adrenaline, the exhaustion, or the way his eyes burned into me like fire. But before I could stop myself, the words slipped out. "Because if I let go, I'll want you." Silence. The kind that could kill. His hand was still on my chest, his heartbeat hammering against mine through the thin space between us. For a second, I thought he'd push me away. But he didn't. Instead, his grip tightened. And in that split second, I knew this fight wasn't about boxing anymore. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was me leaning into his touch. Maybe it was him closing the space that had been choking us for weeks. All I know is that the ropes pressed into my back, his hand still flat against my chest, and the air between us vanished. His lips hovered a breath away. I could smell the salt of his sweat, the faint leather on his skin, the heat radiating from his body. My entire world shrank to the point where our mouths nearly touched. My pulse throbbed in my ears. But then, just as quickly, he pulled back. The sudden absence hit me like a sucker punch. His eyes darkened, his jaw clenched, and for the first time, Ethan looked, shaken. "This can't happen," he muttered, his voice low and ragged. "Why not?" My own voice cracked, desperate and raw. He turned away, ripped off his gloves, and tossed them to the mat. "Because I'm your coach. Because you're not ready. Because if I cross that line, I won't be able to stop." I stood there, fists trembling, torn between fury and longing. He thought I wasn't ready. He thought he could just ignite this fire inside me and then walk away. "You're a coward," I spat. That made him freeze. His back was to me, shoulders tense, fists clenched at his sides. For a heartbeat, I thought he would turn and lash out. Instead, he walked out of the ring without another word, leaving me breathless and aching. That night, I stayed in the gym long after he left. I hit the heavy bag until my knuckles split, until the pain drowned out everything else. But no matter how hard I punched, the memory of his hand on my chest, the fire in his eyes, refused to fade. The days that followed were torture. Ethan avoided me. He barked orders from a distance, corrected me with words instead of touch, kept his eyes cold and unreadable. And I hated him for it. But worse than the hatred was the yearning. Every time he passed me without a glance, every time he folded his arms and watched me from across the gym, every time his voice cut through the air without softness, I felt the absence of something I'd never truly had. It made me reckless. During sparring sessions, I pushed harder, swung faster, ignored my limits. I wanted him to lose control, to break that mask, to give me anything that wasn't distance. One night, after I nearly collapsed from exhaustion, he finally snapped. "Enough." His voice cracked like thunder, echoing off the walls. He stormed into the ring, grabbed me by the shoulders, and shook me so hard I nearly lost my footing. "Are you trying to kill yourself?" I laughed bitterly, breathless. "What do you care?" His grip tightened. His eyes blazed into mine, closer than they'd been in days. "Don't you dare say that. Don't you dare think I don't care." "Then prove it." I screamed, my voice breaking. "Stop pretending you don't feel this too." The silence that followed was deafening. His chest heaved against mine, his breath hot on my face. His hands trembled where they held me, like he was fighting a war inside himself. And then, without warning, his lips crushed against mine. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was fire, rage, desperation, everything we'd been holding back exploding in one violent, beautiful collision. I gasped into him, my knees nearly buckling, and his arms wrapped around me like he was afraid I'd disappear. For a moment, the world disappeared. There was only his mouth, his touch, the sound of my own heartbeat hammering like a drum. But just as quickly, he broke away, shoving himself back like the kiss had burned him. "This was a mistake," he said hoarsely. My chest caved. "No. Don't you dare." He cut me off, shaking his head. "You don't understand. I can't do this with you. Not now." "Then when?" My voice cracked. "When I'm stronger. When I prove myself. Or when it's too late and you've pushed me so far away I don't even want you anymore." His face twisted, like my words cut deeper than any punch. But he didn't answer. He just turned, grabbed his bag, and walked out, leaving me shattered all over again. For weeks, I tried to hate him. I told myself he was cruel, that he didn't care, that the kiss had meant nothing to him. But deep down, I knew I was lying. I felt the truth in his hands, in the way his lips trembled against mine, in the fear that lived behind his eyes. Ethan wasn't heartless. He was terrified. And if there's one thing I understood, it was fear. So I trained harder. Not recklessly, not to provoke him, but with purpose. I pushed myself until my muscles screamed, until my technique sharpened, until even Ethan couldn't ignore the progress. And slowly, something shifted. He started watching me again, not with detachment, but with the intensity one remembered. He corrected my form with a touch on the shoulder, a nudge of the wrist. His gaze lingered a little longer than it should. One night, after a grueling session, he lingered by the door as I packed my things. "You're getting stronger," he said. His voice was quiet, almost reluctant. I looked up at him, sweat dripping down my face. "Because I have something to fight for." His jaw tightened. "Don't say that." "Why not? It's the truth." He stepped closer, the tension between us humming like electricity. "You think this is a game? You think wanting me will make your life easier?" "No," I whispered, "but it makes it worth living." The silence stretched. His eyes searched mine, desperate, conflicted. And then he turned away, leaving me with nothing but the echo of my own words. But fate doesn't let things stay unresolved forever. A month later, I entered my first real amateur fight under his coaching. The crowd roared. The lights blinded. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't fighting Daniel's ghost, I was fighting for myself. Ethan stood in my corner, arms crossed, face unreadable. But when the bell rang and I landed my first clean hit, I caught the tiniest flicker of pride in his eyes. Round after round, pushed, remembering everything he'd drilled into me. Keep my guard up. Breathe. Control the rage. And when the final bell rang, I stood victorious, my knuckles bleeding, my chest heaving, my soul alive. The crowd cheered, but all I saw was him. Ethan climbed into the ring, grabbed me by the shoulders, and for once, didn't hold back. His arms wrapped around me, tight and fierce, his mouth brushing my ear as he whispered, "You did it." I clung to him, trembling, because in that moment, I wasn't just a fighter. I was his, and no amount of fear could take that away. That night, we didn't go home separately. He didn't speak as he drove me to his place, the silence between us heavy with everything unsaid. My heart hammered, not from the fight, but from the anticipation of what was coming. When we stepped inside his apartment, bare, quiet, smelling faintly of coffee and leather, finally turned to me. His eyes were softer than I'd ever seen, his mask shattered. "I can't keep fighting this," he admitted. "Then don't," I whispered. And when he kissed me again, it wasn't fire or rage. It was surrender. This time, he didn't pull away. The first night I spent in Ethan's apartment didn't feel real. It felt like stepping into a dream I'd been secretly sketching in the dark corners of my mind. A dream I'd been too afraid to voice. The place was quiet, almost too quiet. His living room was sparse, just a worn leather couch, a coffee table with a few scattered magazines, and a framed photograph of a younger Ethan in the ring, gloves raised, sweat glistening on his jaw. He looked fearless in that photo, the kind of man who couldn't be broken. But the man standing beside me now wasn't just a fighter. He was something infinitely more fragile. Ethan didn't speak as he took my bag from me and set it on the floor. His silence was heavy, but not empty. Carried the weight of decisions, the kind that could change the course of both our lives. "Do you want a shower?" he finally asked, voice low. I shook my head. "No. I just want," but the words caught in my throat. Because the truth was too much. I just wanted him. His eyes softened, like he'd heard it anyway. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him, close enough that my heart stumbled into a new rhythm. And then his hand cupped the side of my face, rough thumb brushing against my cheekbone, grounding me in the simplest of touches. When he kissed me again, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was slow, deliberate, almost reverent, like he was memorizing the shape of my mouth, the taste of my breath, The fact that I was here, with him, despite everything. I melted. My hands found their way around his neck, pulling him closer, terrified he'd vanish if I let go. His arms wrapped around my waist, lifting me off the ground just slightly, like holding me wasn't enough needed to claim me. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt safe. Not because the world outside had changed, but because in his arms, it didn't matter. The days that followed blurred into something I couldn't define. We still trained, still kept the routine of the gym, but now there was something new in the air between us. Something fragile. Something forbidden. Ethan tried to keep it contained. He tried to be professional, to bark orders and maintain the same distance as before. But his eyes betrayed him. Every time he adjusted my gloves, his fingers lingered. Every time I landed a clean strike, his lips twitched into a smile he didn't mean to show. And every night, when the gym lights went dark, I found myself in his apartment, his bed, his arms. But secrets have a way of poisoning even the sweetest things. People noticed the change in me. My friends at school saw the bruises and the new fire in my eyes. They teased, asked if I had someone special. I laughed it off, but the truth burned beneath my skin. And in the gym, whispers spread. Not about us, no one dared, but about Ethan. His past. His fall from glory. One evening, as I laced up my gloves, I overheard two older fighters talking near the water cooler. Crazy to see him back here. One muttered. Used to be the best in the circuit. Then he disappeared. Not disappeared. The other corrected. Self-destructed. Through a fight. Didn't he? Rumor is, he got tied up with the wrong people. Haven't seen him in the ring since. I froze. My stomach twisted. Through a fight. Ethan. The man who lived and breathed discipline. Who drilled me until my body screamed. It didn't make sense. I wanted to ignore it. To let their words slide off me. But that night, when Ethan kissed me in the shadows of his apartment, I felt the weight of unasked questions pressing against my lips. It wasn't until the third week that I broke. We were in the ring, sparring hard, sweat flying with every strike. Ethan moved like lightning, dodging, countering, his eyes sharp and unyielding. But I couldn't focus. The whispers echoed in my head. When the round ended, I dropped my gloves, gasping. Why did you stop fighting? The question hit him harder than any punch I'd thrown. His entire body went rigid. That's none of your business, he said flatly. The hell it isn't. I snapped. You drill me every night. Push me until I can't stand. Tell me to face my fears, but you won't face your own. What happened? His jaw clenched. His gloves dropped to the mat with a dull thud. Don't push me on this. I already did, I said. My voice cracked, but I didn't back down. I need to know who I'm with. I need to know what you're running from. The silence stretched, suffocating. Then he turned away, his back to me, shoulders heavy. I lost control, he said finally. His voice was hollow, like the words had been buried deep for years. I let someone get too close. I thought I could balance it fighting, training, love, but I couldn't. I let my guard down, and it cost me everything. My career, my reputation, my future. I swallowed hard. So you shut yourself off? Yes. He turned, eyes burning with a pain I hadn't seen before. Because it's easier to be a ghost than to let it happen again. I stepped toward him, my chest tight. And what about me? Am I just another mistake waiting to happen? His hands trembled as he reached for me, then stopped. hovering inches from my skin. You're the one thing I can't afford to want. The words should have shattered me, but instead, they lit a fire. Then want me anyway, I whispered. And when he kissed me, it was with the force of a man who knew he was already lost. But the past has claws. And Ethan's past wasn't finished with him yet. It started with late-night phone calls he never answered, the way he stiffened whenever his phone buzzed. Then came the men, two of them, lurking near the gym one evening, their eyes cold, their presence wrong. I caught him outside that night, his fists clenched, his jaw tight. Who were they? I asked. Old mistakes, he muttered. Mistakes that want what? He looked at me then, eyes haunted, to remind me that the past doesn't forgive. A chill ran down my spine. Ethan, what did you do? He didn't answer. Instead, he brushed past me, leaving me in the dark. But I wasn't blind. Something dangerous was circling us, and no amount of late-night kisses or whispered promises could keep it away forever. And yet, even with shadows closing in, our bond deepened. Maybe it was reckless. Maybe it was doomed. But when I lay in his bed, his arm heavy around me, his breath steady against my neck, I felt more alive than I ever had. One night, as the city lights spilled through his window, I whispered, "Do you regret this?" He stirred, eyes half-lidded, hair falling across his forehead. Every second I'm with you feels like a risk. Then why keep me here? His hand slid down my arm, fingers intertwining with mine. Because every second without you feels like death. The confession carved itself into me. I turned to face him, pressing my forehead to his. Then let's risk it together. His lips found mine, slow and tender, and for once, there was no fear, just us. But love isn't enough to silence the past. And soon, the ghosts Ethan had tried to bury would come knocking louder than ever. The night the past finally caught up with us started like any other. The gym was nearly empty, the heavy bags swaying in the dim light, the faint smell of sweat and leather hanging in the air. I was wrapping my hands while Ethan adjusted the straps on the speed bag. His movements were sharp, mechanical, but his eyes weren't here. They were somewhere far away, locked on ghosts I couldn't touch. "Ethan," I said softly, breaking the silence. "Talk to me, please." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he punched the speed bag hard, sending it rattling against its chain. His jaw was clenched, his shoulders coiled with tension. "They won't leave me alone," he muttered finally. "Who?" "People I used to owe. People I thought I could outrun." He turned, his gaze pinning me. "You don't want to be anywhere near me when they decide they've waited long enough." I stepped closer, refusing to flinch. "You don't get to decide that for me." His laugh was bitter, broken. "You think this is some fairy tale? That you can love a man who's already ruined himself and come out clean on the other side? That's not how this works." "Then teach me how it does," I snapped. "Stop shutting me out, Ethan. You're not the only one who's scared." His hands shook as he grabbed mine, pulling me close. "You don't understand. They can hurt you." And his voice cracked. I couldn't live with that. For a moment, we just stood there, the sound of our breaths filling the space. And then the gym door creaked open. Two men walked in, their presence filling the room with a heaviness that made the air hard to breathe. One was tall and broad, his leather jacket creaking with every step. The other was leaner, sharp-eyed, with a scar running down his cheek. "Ethan," the tall one drawled. "Long time." Ethan stiffened. He stepped in front of me instinctively, his body a shield. What do you want? You know what we want. Scarface sneered. His eyes flicked to me, and I felt my stomach twist. And who's this? Your new project. Ethan's fists clenched. He's nobody. This is between us. My chest burned, but I bit back the hurt. This wasn't about might, it was about survival. The tall one smirked. You think you can hide forever? You owe us, Ethan. And until you pay, we own you. I'm done. Ethan growled. I'm not your puppet anymore. Scarface stepped closer, his voice dripping with venom. Then maybe the kid pays the price. I felt Ethan's entire body tremble. His arm shot out, pushing me further behind him. Don't touch him. Don't even look at him. The men exchanged a glance, amused by his fury. Then the tall one leaned in, his voice low and deadly. You've got 1 week. Pay up, or we'll make sure he bleeds for you. And just like that, they were gone. The silence they left behind was suffocating. I touched Ethan's arm, my hand shaking. What do they want from you? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Money. Control. A piece of my soul I already lost years ago. Then let me help you. You can't. His voice was a whisper, but it cut deep. This is my mess. My fight. No, I said fiercely. It's ours. You don't get to push me away anymore. Not after everything. He looked at me then, really looked at me, his eyes full of pain and something dangerously close to hope. And I knew, in that moment, he was standing on the edge of a choice that could break us both. The week that followed was a blur of tension. Ethan trained me harder than ever, but his mind was elsewhere. His eyes darted to the door whenever it creaked. His hands tightened into fists whenever his phone buzzed. At night, when I lay beside him, he held me like a man clinging to the last good thing in a world determined to destroy him. His kisses were hungrier, more desperate, as if memorizing me before it was too late. One night, as I traced the scars along his ribs with my fingertips, I whispered, "Tell me what they have over you." He closed his eyes, his breath uneven. I threw a fight. Years ago. I was young, reckless, and stupid. They promised me a payday if I went down in the 3rd round. I thought I could outsmart them, lose the fight, take the money, and walk away. But it doesn't work like that. You don't just walk away from men like them. Why didn't you go to the police? He laughed bitterly. And tell them what? That I sold my integrity for cash and ruined my own career. That I let myself be owned by men who thrive on weakness. No cop would care. No one did. I pressed my forehead to his. I care. His hands cupped my face, trembling. And that's what terrifies me. The deadline loomed, and with it, a storm neither of us could avoid. On the final night, Ethan didn't take me to the gym. Instead, he drove us to a deserted lot on the edge of the city. His jaw was tight, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. I need you to stay in the car, he said. No. Please. If anything goes wrong, I'm not letting you face this alone. He closed his eyes, pain flickering across his face. But he didn't argue. When the men arrived, their headlights cut through the dark, bathing the lot in harsh light. The tall one stepped out first, a smug smile on his face. Scarface followed, his eyes gleaming with malice. You've got my money, the tall one asked. Ethan stood tall, defiant. I'm not paying you another cent. Scarface's grin widened. Then you just signed his death warrant. His gaze flicked toward me in the car. Before I could react, Ethan lunged. His fist connected with Scarface's jaw, sending him sprawling. The tall one swung back, and suddenly fists flew, the sound of flesh against flesh echoing in the night. I couldn't stay in the car. My body moved before my brain caught up. I grabbed the tire iron from the trunk and ran into the fray. "Get back!" Ethan roared when he saw me, but it was too late. Scarface lunged, and I swung, the iron connecting with his shoulder. He cursed, stumbling back. Adrenaline surged through me. Fear and fury tangled together. For the first time, I wasn't just watching Ethan fight his demons, I was fighting them too. The brawl was brutal. Ethan's knuckles split. Blood streaked down his face. But he didn't stop. He fought like a man with nothing left to lose. And when it was over, when the men finally scrambled into their car and sped off into the night, Ethan collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. I dropped beside him, my hands shaking. "Are you okay?" He looked at me, bloodied and broken, and for the first time, he smiled. "I am now." But even as I held him in the dark, I knew this wasn't over. Those men would be back. The past doesn't vanish in one fight. And if we wanted a future, we'd have to face it together, no matter how bloody, no matter how dangerous. Because for the first time, Ethan wasn't fighting alone. And neither was I. The next morning, the bruises had set in. Ethan's knuckles were swollen and torn, his jaw already darkening with a deep purple mark. My shoulder ached from swinging that tire iron, and my ribs protested every breath I took. But none of that compared to the heaviness hanging between us. We sat in silence at his kitchen table, 2 mugs of untouched coffee cooling between us. The city was waking outside the window, horns blaring, sunlight creeping across the floor. But inside his apartment, felt like time had stopped. Ethan finally broke the silence. "You should go." The words hit harder than any punch he'd ever thrown. "What?" "You heard me," he said, his voice flat, detached. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "They won't stop. Last night was just the beginning. I can't drag you into this. It's not fair." Fair. I slammed my hands on the table, my voice rising. "You think I care about fair? You think I didn't know what I was getting into with you? You're not just my coach, Ethan. You're not just some fling I can walk away from. You matter to me." His jaw tightened, his fists clenching on the table. "And that's exactly why you need to leave." I leaned forward, forcing him to look at me. "No. That's why I'm staying. Because you're not going to fight this war alone anymore. I won't let you." Something cracked in his eyes then. Something fragile and unguarded. He exhaled, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of years had finally come crashing down. "You don't understand. They'll come after you. And if they hurt you," his voice broke, raw with fear, "I wouldn't survive it." My chest tightened. I reached across the table, taking his battered hand in mine. "Then we fight smarter. We fight together. And we stop running." He closed his eyes, his grip tightening around mine. And for the first time, I think he let himself believe it might be possible. But believing was one thing. Surviving was another. Word spread fast in the gym. Whispers of Ethan's fight in the lot. Rumors about debts and dangerous men. Some people avoided him, like he was a ticking bomb. Others looked at him with pity, like a fallen hero too broken to rise again. Ethan ignored it all. He kept training me, kept pushing me, but there was a new edge to his teaching now. It wasn't just about boxing anymore. It was about survival. You can't just rely on technique. he said one night, circling me in the ring. Sometimes it's about grit, about refusing to fall no matter how many times you're hit. I wiped the sweat from my eyes, my lungs burning. Sounds like life. His mouth twitched into the smallest smile. Exactly. Those sessions became more than training. They became a language, a way for us to speak truths we couldn't say out loud. Every punch, every block, every drop of sweat was a promise we weren't giving up. Not on ourselves. Not on each other. But the world outside the gym didn't care about promises. One evening, as I was leaving after practice, a black car pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down, and Scarface leaned out, his grin sharp as a blade. "Nice work the other night," he sneered. "You've got guts, kid. Shame they won't keep you alive." My heart pounded, but I forced myself to stand tall. Stay away from him. Stay away from us. Scarface chuckled. "Oh, I like you. Brave. Stupid, but brave. Tell Ethan the clock's ticking. He can either pay what he owes, or we'll take something he can't get back." His gaze slid over me like poison. "You." The car sped off, leaving me shaking on the sidewalk. When I told Ethan later, he went silent. His hands shook as he unwrapped my wrists, and I could see the storm building behind his eyes. "This ends now," he said finally. "I won't let them use you against me." "How?" I asked. "They won't just walk away." His eyes met mine, steady and unflinching. "Then we make them." The plan wasn't perfect. It wasn't even safe. But it was all we had. Ethan called in a favor from an old friend, a retired cop who still had connections. They couldn't erase Ethan's past, but they could set a trap, gather evidence, and finally put the men who haunted him behind bars. "It's risky," the cop warned us. "You'll have to meet them, make the exchange. We'll be watching. But if they smell a setup, could get ugly." Ethan looked at me, his jaw set. "You're not coming." I crossed my arms. "Try and stop me." His eyes softened, but he didn't argue. Because we both knew whatever happened, we were in it together. The night of the meet, the air was thick with tension. We drove to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, headlights cutting through the darkness. My stomach churned, but Ethan's hand on mine kept me grounded. "We walk in. We play their game," he murmured. "And when the time comes, we end it." Scarface and the tall one were already waiting inside, their grins wide, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Ethan," the tall one drawled. "Right on time. And you brought your little pet. Brave." "Let's finish this," Ethan growled. They circled us, sharks smelling blood. Scarface pulled out a slip of paper, the fake terms of another debt Ethan supposedly owed. "Sign it, and maybe we let you walk." Ethan didn't move. He stood tall, defiant. "Not this time." The tension snapped. Scarface lunged, and chaos erupted. Fists flew. Bodies crashed. Shouts echoed through the warehouse. I fought like Ethan had taught Meggard up, feet steady, refusing to fall. And then, just when it seemed we were outnumbered, the cops stormed in. Sirens wailed. Lights flashed. And the men who had haunted Ethan for years were dragged away in handcuffs, spitting curses. When it was over, Ethan collapsed against the wall, blood dripping from his lip, sweat soaking his shirt. I dropped beside him, my chest heaving. "It's over," I whispered. He looked at me, eyes shining with something I'd never seen before: freedom. "Yeah," he breathed. "It's finally over." The days that followed felt like a new life. The gym was no longer a battlefield. It was ours. A place of healing, of growth, of quiet moments that belonged only to us. Ethan's reputation began to shift. People whispered less about his past and more about the fighter he was becoming again, not in the ring, but in life. And for me, every bruise, every scar, was a reminder of what we'd survived together. One night, as we lay tangled in his sheets, the city lights painting gold across his skin, I whispered the question that had been burning in me for weeks. What now? He turned to me, his hand brushing my hair back from my face. Now we stop running. We build something that lasts. If you'll have me. I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. I've already had you, Ethan. From the first night I walked into that gym. His lips found mine, soft and certain, and in that kiss, I knew whatever came next, we'd face it together. The weeks after the warehouse raid felt like breathing after years of suffocation. For the first time, Ethan wasn't looking over his shoulder. The men who had once haunted his every step were behind bars. Their empire of fear dismantled piece by piece. The gym, once a place shadowed by his past, became a sanctuary, a space where sweat meant progress, not survival. But peace is a strange thing. It doesn't arrive all at once, creeps in slowly, uncertainly, like a wounded animal testing whether it's safe to rest. And for Ethan, learning to rest, to allow himself happiness, was perhaps the hardest fight of all. I noticed it in small ways first. The way he still flinched at sudden noises, or how his eyes lingered on the door longer than necessary when we locked up at night. Sometimes, when he thought I wasn't watching, his hands would tremble, as though his body hadn't realized the war was over. One evening, after we finished training, I caught his hand before he could pull away. You don't have to be on guard with me. Not anymore. He swallowed, his eyes heavy with years of exhaustion. I don't know how to turn it off. Then let me teach you, I said softly. It became our new kind of training. Not jabs or hooks, but the practice of gentleness. I'd guide his hand to my chest, let him feel the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. We'd sit in silence, counting breaths until his shoulders loosened. Some nights, when nightmares clawed him awake, I'd hold him until dawn, whispering that he was safe, that we weren't going back. Slowly, he began to believe it. Slowly, I watched him heal. The gym flourished in ways I hadn't expected. Word of Ethan's resilience spread. People came not just to learn boxing, but to learn from him, the man who had fallen and risen, who had fought demons outside the ring and survived. And he didn't turn them away. I'd watch him with the younger fighters, the way he corrected their stance, the way he encouraged them when they faltered. His voice, once sharp with anger, carried patience now. He wasn't just teaching them how to fight, was teaching them how to endure, how to believe in their own strength. You're building something here, I told him one night as we swept the floors together. He looked around, at the ring, at the bags swinging lightly, at the sweat-stained mats that smelled of effort and persistence. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he nodded. Yeah, maybe I am. And you're not doing it alone anymore, I added, nudging him with my shoulder. His lips curved into that rare, unguarded smile I'd come to crave. No, he said. I'm not. Spring arrived in New York with its usual drama, sudden rainstorms, blooming trees, streets alive with color. One evening, after closing the gym, Ethan led me up to the roof. The city stretched out around us, glittering and alive. He had a bottle of whiskey in one hand, two mismatched glasses in the other. Figured we deserved to celebrate. We sat shoulder to shoulder, sipping, the night air cool against our skin. Below us, sirens wailed and horns blared, but up here, it felt like the world belonged only to us. I used to come up here after fights, Ethan admitted, his voice low. Back when I thought the only way forward was through pain. I'd sit here, looking out at all of this, wondering if I'd ever find something worth staying for. My chest tightened. And did you? He turned to me then, his eyes soft, unguarded in a way that stole my breath. Yeah, he said simply. I did. The kiss that followed wasn't desperate or frantic. It was slow, certain, the kind of kiss that carried weight not just of desire, but of choice. The choice to stay, the choice to build, the choice to love. Months passed, and the rhythm of our lives settled into something beautiful in its simplicity. Mornings spent running together through quiet streets. Afternoons at the gym. Nights tangled in each other's arms. It wasn't perfect, he still had scars. I still carried fears, but it was real. And it was ours. One night, as we lay in bed, Ethan's head resting on my chest, he whispered, I used to think my story was already written. That it ended with me alone. Broken. Just another fighter who burned out too soon. I stroked his hair, letting the silence stretch. And now? He looked up at me, his eyes steady, his voice firm. Now I know the best part's still ahead. Because it's with you. Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't look away. Then let's write it together. The last big test came quietly, not with fists or threats, but with an invitation. Ethan was offered the chance to return to the professional ring. Comeback fight. The offer was tempting, proof that he wasn't defined by the past. Proof that he could rise again in front of the world. But with it came risk. Old wounds. Old temptations. Old ghosts whispering that maybe he wasn't as healed as he thought. We talked for hours, night after night, about fear, about pride, about what it meant to move forward. I'm scared, he admitted one night, his voice breaking. What if I fail? What if I can't do it? I took his hands, pressing them to my heart. Then you fail, and we get back up, like you taught me. Either way, you're not alone in the ring anymore. I'll be there. Always. He searched my face. And in that moment, I think he realized the fight was no longer about proving himself to the world. It was about proving that he could choose happiness, even in the face of fear. The night of the fight arrived. Madison Square Garden pulsed with energy. The crowd electric. The lights blinding. As Ethan stepped into the ring, the roar shook the floor beneath us. I stood in his corner, my chest tight with pride and terror. He looked across at his opponent, a younger fighter, hungry, unscarred by the battles of life. And then he looked back at me. In that glance, everything was said. The bell rang. The fight wasn't easy. Ethan stumbled, bled, faltered. But he kept getting back up. Every time he fell, I shouted until my throat burned. And every time he rose, the crowd roared louder. And in the final round, battered but unbroken, Ethan landed the punch that sent his opponent crashing to the mat. The arena erupted. The referee's count was a blur. But when the hand was raised, when Ethan stood victorious, tears spilled down my cheeks. Because it wasn't just a win. It was redemption. That night, as we left the arena, the city alive around us, Ethan pulled me close, his arms strong and certain around my shoulders. We made it, he whispered. I smiled, resting my head against him. Yeah, we did. And in that moment, I knew the truth. Love hadn't just saved him. It had saved me. 2. Not with grand gestures, not with perfect promises, but with the quiet, steady courage to keep showing up, to keep fighting, to keep choosing each other, day after day. Our story wasn't about the bruises or the battles, the debts or the demons. It was about the nights spent on rooftops, the mornings in the gym, the way his hand found mine in the dark. It was about two men who refused to let fear write their ending. It was about us. And as the city lights shimmered around us, as Ethan pressed a kiss to my temple, I knew whatever came next, we'd face it together. Because for the first time, we weren't just surviving. We were living. And we were in love. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.